Welcome, the anointed ones. The moment people can no longer control your direction, they will try to control your reputation. Never confuse their gossip with your downfall. It is often the sound of their defeat. There is a strange truth about human nature that psychologists have observed for years. When people lose influence over someone, they rarely admit it openly. Instead, they begin talking about that person far more than they did before. Gossip becomes a coping mechanism. It's easier to rewrite someone else's story than to accept that you've lost your place in it. If you've been wondering why certain people suddenly can't seem to stop mentioning your name, why entire circles seem unusually interested in what you're doing, or why people who once ignored you now have endless opinions about your life, this message will connect some dots you may have never considered. Here's the ironic part. The very people who claimed you were finished somehow never stop checking to see what you're doing next. It's almost like they accidentally subscribe to your life without clicking the button. That's free publicity, even if they refuse to admit it. What you're about to hear isn't about revenge, popularity, or proving anyone wrong. It's about understanding what really happens when someone refuses to stay inside the box that others built for them. Sometimes one person's growth doesn't just surprise people. It quietly dismantles an entire group's way of thinking. And when that happens, conversations begin. Stories are invented. Rumors spread. Not because you destroyed them, but because your transformation exposed everything they believed was unshakable. Today, we're going beneath the surface of the gossip. We're uncovering why your name keeps echoing in rooms you no longer enter, why your absence became louder than your presence ever was, and why the people who tried hardest to dismiss you are now the ones keeping your story alive. Stay with me, because each point reveals a layer of human behavior that most people experience but very few ever recognize. Number one, they were never fighting you. They were protecting their version of reality. Most people believe conflict starts because someone dislikes another person. In reality, many conflicts begin because someone's existence threatens a belief that others have built their lives around. Every group creates its own version of reality. It decides who deserves respect, who should stay quiet, who will never rise above a certain level, and who is allowed to lead. Once those roles are accepted, everyone is expected to stay in them. The moment you refuse, you become a problem, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've challenged an invisible agreement. That is why the gossip became so intense. They weren't simply discussing your actions. They were trying to protect the story they had already written about you. If they admitted that you had grown beyond their expectations, they would also have to admit that they misjudged you from the beginning. For many people, protecting their pride feels easier than accepting the truth. What's fascinating is that your success exposed something much deeper than jealousy. It revealed how fragile confidence can be when it's built on comparison instead of character. Some people only feel secure when they believe they know exactly where everyone belongs. When you stepped beyond the limits they quietly placed on you, their certainty collapsed. Suddenly they had to explain why the person they underestimated was no longer living according to their predictions. That is why your name keeps coming up. Every conversation is another attempt to make reality fit their old beliefs. But reality refuses to cooperate. Your growth keeps proving them wrong, and that creates a kind of tension they cannot easily escape. They aren't really arguing with your progress. They are arguing with the uncomfortable truth that their judgment was flawed, their assumptions were shallow, and the version of reality they defended was never as solid as they believed. Number two, your refusal to play their social game destroyed their entire strategy. Some people are powerful only because everyone around them agrees to follow the same invisible rules. They know who should receive attention, who should apologize first, who should stay quiet, and who should always seek approval. It becomes a carefully managed system where everyone plays their assigned role. Then someone comes along who refuses to participate, and suddenly the entire system starts feeling unstable. That person becomes difficult to control because they are no longer chasing the rewards the group uses to influence people. They are not desperate for acceptance. They are not begging to be understood. They are not changing themselves just to fit into a space that no longer matches who they are. And that is what frustrates people the most. When you stopped reacting the way they expected, their strategy lost its power. The arguments that once pulled you in no longer worked. The pressure that once made you question yourself no longer had the same effect. They were left trying to solve a problem they created themselves. How do you control someone who is no longer looking for permission to be themselves? This is why some people start talking when they can no longer influence. Gossip becomes their last tool. They create explanations, spread opinions, and search for support from others because they need to convince themselves that they are still right. But the truth is, the strongest disruption is not always a loud confrontation. Sometimes it is simply refusing to continue playing a game that was designed to keep you small. When you step outside the rules that were limiting you, you don't just change your own life. You reveal how dependent others were on those rules existing in the first place. Number 3, the loudest critics are secretly studying your every move. One of the strangest things about human behavior is that the people who criticize you the most are often the ones paying the closest attention to you. They may speak as if they don't care, but their constant opinions reveal something different. You cannot spend so much time analyzing someone's choices, progress, and decisions without being deeply focused on them. When people cannot understand your path, they often become observers before they become critics. They watch how you handle pressure, how you recover from setbacks, and how you continue moving forward despite the things they expected to stop you. Your ability to keep growing becomes a mystery they want to solve. They may never admit admiration, but their attention tells a different story. The interesting part is that criticism often comes from a place of confusion. They expected you to react a certain way. They expected you to become discouraged, seek their approval, or prove yourself to them. But when you continued building your life without their permission, they were forced to pay attention because their original judgment no longer made sense. This is why some people know details about you that you never even told them. They notice changes, remember your mistakes, and track your progress because your journey has become a topic of discussion. They might package it as criticism, but underneath it is a constant attempt to understand how someone they underestimated continues to move differently. The reality is simple. People rarely study what they truly believe is irrelevant. When someone keeps watching your every move, it is often because your growth challenged something inside them. Your actions became proof that their assumptions about you were wrong, and now they are watching closely because they don't want to miss what happens next. Number 4, you accidentally exposed the fragility of their unity. Not every group is held together by genuine connection. Some groups appear strong because they have a shared target, a shared opinion, or a shared reason to stand against someone else. As long as there is someone to blame, criticize, or discuss, everyone feels connected. But remove that distraction, and the real structure of the group begins to reveal itself. Your decision to step away, grow, or stop participating changed the entire dynamic. Suddenly, people had to interact without having you as the main topic. They had to face conversations, disagreements, and insecurities that had been hidden behind their focus on you. The person they thought was causing problems was no longer there, yet the problems remained. That realization can be uncomfortable. It forces people to recognize that the tension they blamed on you was often already inside the group. You were not the source of the cracks. You simply became the person who made those cracks easier to notice. This is why some groups become even louder after someone leaves. They need to maintain the belief that the problem was outside of them. Accepting that the issue was deeper would require honesty, accountability, and change. 3 things many people avoid because they are not easy. The truth is, a person who refuses to carry unnecessary drama can reveal more than someone who constantly fights back. Your growth created a situation where people could no longer hide behind the same excuses. The unity they displayed was tested, and what was real became stronger, while what was built on insecurity started falling apart. Sometimes the greatest disruption is not what you do to a group. It is what your absence reveals about the group itself. Number 5, your emotional discipline took away their favorite source of entertainment. Some people are not interested in solving problems. They are interested in creating reactions. They feel powerful when they can push someone's buttons, trigger an argument, or make someone lose control. For them, another person's emotional response becomes proof that they still have influence. But when you learn to control your reactions, you remove the very thing that gave their behavior power. This is what many people misunderstand about emotional discipline. It is not weakness. It is not pretending that nothing bothers you. It is the ability to decide what deserves your energy and what does not. When you stop responding to every accusation, every unnecessary comment, and every attempt to pull you into chaos, you change the entire dynamic. People who are used to getting a reaction often become confused when their usual methods stop working. They may increase their efforts, become more dramatic, or search for new ways to get your attention because they are trying to bring back the version of you they could easily influence. But growth changes your responses. You begin to understand that not every battle deserves your presence. Not every opinion requires an explanation. Not every person deserves access to your emotions. That realization can be frustrating for those who depended on your reactions to feel important. The most powerful thing you did was not defeating them in an argument. It was becoming someone they could no longer provoke into becoming a version of yourself you had already outgrown. When your emotions became something you managed instead of something others controlled, their ability to disturb your peace disappeared. And for people who relied on your reaction, that loss of influence can be harder to accept than any disagreement. Number 6, they can't accept that you outgrew a room. They still worship. One of the hardest things for people to accept is watching someone leave behind what they are still deeply attached to. Growth creates distance, and that distance can feel like rejection to those who are comfortable staying where they are. When you begin changing your mindset, raising your standards, and moving towards something greater, some people do not see it as personal development. They see it as you stepping away from the world they are still trying to protect. The truth is, not everyone wants to see you evolve because your growth forces them to look at their own choices. Your progress becomes a reminder that change was possible all along. Instead of celebrating your transformation, they may question it, criticize it, or try to convince others that you have become different in a negative way. But becoming different was the entire point. You were never meant to remain the same person forever, just to make others comfortable. The version of you that once needed acceptance, permission, or approval had a purpose, but it was never meant to be your permanent identity. Sometimes growth means leaving behind conversations, environments, and relationships that can no longer support where you are going. What surprises people is that you didn't need to destroy the old room. You simply stopped needing to stay inside it. And that can be uncomfortable for those who built their confidence around everyone remaining the same. They may gossip because they cannot understand why you no longer chase what they still value. They may criticize because your evolution challenges their comfort. But deep down, what they are witnessing is someone who finally realized that staying small was never the same as staying loyal. Number 7, your consistency quietly defeated their predictions. People can handle a temporary setback because they can easily explain it away. They can say you were lucky, that it was a coincidence, or that your success will not last. But what becomes difficult for them to accept is consistency. When your actions keep proving their assumptions wrong over time, their excuses start running out. Some people create a version of you in their minds and become attached to that image. They expect you to give up after disappointment, lose confidence after criticism, or return to the same patterns they were comfortable with. They are not prepared for the person who keeps improving, keeps learning, and keeps moving forward regardless of what is said about them. Your consistency becomes a silent contradiction to every negative prediction they made. Every new achievement, every moment of discipline, and every time you overcome another challenge adds another piece of evidence that they misunderstood you. The story they created about your failure begins falling apart, and that can be uncomfortable for people who were certain they knew your future. The most powerful part is that you did not have to convince anyone. You did not need to argue, defend yourself, or announce your plans. You simply continued doing the work, while others spent their energy discussing what they thought would happen. Over time, results become louder than opinions. People can debate your intentions, question your choices, or criticize your journey, but they cannot easily argue with consistent growth. That is why some critics become quiet, while others keep talking. They are watching someone they underestimated become the exact opposite of what they predicted. Number 8, you forced them to meet the person they were avoiding in the mirror. Sometimes the strongest reactions people have toward you are not really about you. They are about what your presence reveals inside them. Certain people become uncomfortable around someone who reflects qualities they have ignored in themselves. Your discipline reminds them of their lack of commitment. Your confidence reminds them of the doubts they have never faced. Your growth reminds them of the changes they keep postponing. This is why some people criticize what they secretly admire. It is easier to attack the person who exposes the truth than to confront the parts of themselves that need attention. Instead of asking why your progress bothers them, they focus on finding something wrong with you. It becomes a distraction from the deeper issue. Your journey may have challenged the excuses they depended on. When someone sees another person overcome obstacles, stay focused and continue improving, it removes the comfort of saying, "It cannot be done." Your actions become proof that change is possible, and that proof can be uncomfortable for anyone who has convinced themselves that they are stuck. The interesting thing is that a mirror does not create what it reflects. It simply reveals what is already there. Your presence did not create their insecurity, frustration, or hidden fears. It only brought those feelings closer to the surface. That is why some people react strongly when you start becoming the person you were meant to be. They are not always fighting your success. Sometimes they are fighting the uncomfortable realization that they have been holding themselves back. Your growth became a reminder of their own untapped potential, and not everyone is ready to face that truth. Number 9, their gossip is really a search for an explanation they cannot find. People naturally look for reasons behind things they do not understand. When someone's journey does not match the expectations others had for them, confusion often appears before acceptance. Instead of admitting that they misjudged someone, some people create stories that help them feel more comfortable with what they are seeing. This is where gossip begins. It becomes an attempt to explain something that does not fit their original beliefs. They want a simple answer for why you changed, why you grew, why you became stronger, or why you no longer need the same things you once did. But when the truth does not match their assumptions, They start filling the gaps with opinions and theories. The interesting part is that gossip often reveals more about the person speaking than the person being discussed. When someone cannot understand your discipline, they may call it obsession. When they cannot understand your confidence, they may call it arrogance. When they cannot understand your independence, they may call it isolation. People sometimes label what they cannot comprehend. The reason your name stays in conversations is because they are still trying to solve the mystery of your transformation. They expected a different outcome, but your actions created a result they were not prepared for. Eventually, reality becomes too strong for any false explanation. Time reveals patterns. Consistency reveals character. Results reveal the truth. And when that happens, the same people who once searched for reasons to doubt you may be forced to search for reasons to respect you. Their gossip was never really about having all the answers. It was about struggling to understand how someone they underestimated became someone they can no longer ignore. Number 10, you changed the power balance without raising your voice. Real power is not always found in the person who speaks the loudest or demands the most attention. Sometimes the biggest shift happens when someone simply changes how they carry themselves. When you become more confident, more disciplined, and less dependent on outside approval, the entire dynamic around you begins to change. Some people are comfortable when they know exactly how to influence you. They understand your fears, your need for acceptance, or your desire to keep everyone happy. That understanding gives them a sense of control. But when you grow beyond those weaknesses, the balance changes. They can no longer predict your decisions or guide your actions the way they once did. This is what surprises people the most. You did not have to fight for control. You did not need to compete for attention. You simply became someone who could no longer be easily pressured, manipulated, or defined by other people's opinions. Your transformation may have challenged people who were used to being the voice everyone followed. When others begin noticing your character, your wisdom, or your ability to remain steady under pressure, it naturally changes how they see you. The influence they once held starts becoming less important. That shift can create discomfort, because some people confuse losing control with being disrespected. They may think you have changed for the worse when in reality, you have simply stopped allowing others to decide your worth. The most powerful changes are often the ones that happen quietly. A person who knows their value does not need to announce their strength. Their actions create a new reality, and eventually, everyone around them has to adjust to it. Number 11, you left them with no evidence to support their narrative. A false story can survive for a while when nobody challenges it, but reality has a way of exposing what does not match the truth. Some people may create opinions about you based on assumptions, emotions, or incomplete information. They may convince themselves and others that they understand your character, your intentions, or your future. But the problem with a false narrative is that it needs constant support to survive. When your actions continue to contradict what they said about you, their own words start becoming difficult to defend. Every responsible decision you make, every challenge you overcome, and every time you remain consistent becomes another piece of evidence that weakens the story they created. This is why some people become frustrated when you continue progressing. They were not prepared for your character to remain steady. They expected your mistakes to prove them right, your struggles to break you, or your journey to end where they predicted. Instead, you kept moving forward, and your life started answering questions they thought they had already settled. The hardest thing for someone who judged you unfairly is watching you succeed without becoming bitter or proving their negativity correct. They wanted a dramatic ending that would confirm their beliefs, but your growth gave them something they could not argue with. Eventually, actions become stronger than rumors. People can say anything about you, but they cannot permanently hide the truth of who you are. A person may control a conversation for a moment, but they cannot control the evidence created by your choices over time. Your consistency became the one thing they could not debate, and that is why their story started losing its power. Number 12. The group didn't collapse. Because of you, it collapsed because truth finally entered the room. One of the biggest mistakes people make is blaming the person who reveals a problem instead of looking at the problem itself. When someone brings honesty, change, or a different perspective into an environment, it can create discomfort. Not because that person caused the issues, but because they made it harder for those issues to remain hidden. Some groups survive by avoiding difficult truths. They maintain peace by pretending everything is fine, ignoring unhealthy patterns, and protecting appearances. As long as everyone follows the same routine, nobody has to confront what is broken. But when someone decides to think differently, speak honestly, or walk away from what no longer feels right, the hidden problems often become impossible to ignore. That is when people sometimes point fingers. It is easier to say, everything changed because of them, than to admit that the foundation was already weak. The truth is, a strong foundation does not fall because one person chooses to grow. It only reveals where the weaknesses were already waiting. Your actions may have exposed conversations people were avoiding. Your boundaries may have revealed relationships built on convenience. Your progress may have shown that some connections were based more on comfort than genuine support. The interesting thing about truth is that it does not destroy what is real. It only challenges what was built on pretending. What survives honesty becomes stronger, and what disappears was never as stable as it appeared. Sometimes people say, you caused problems, when the reality is that you simply stopped helping them ignore the problems that were already there. Your presence did not break the system. Your courage revealed that the system was already breaking. Number 13. Your greatest victory was becoming impossible to manipulate. One of the biggest transformations a person can experience is reaching a point where they are no longer easily controlled by outside opinions, pressure, or emotional tactics. Many people are not used to dealing with someone who knows their value and no longer needs constant approval. When you stop seeking permission to be yourself, you become much harder to influence. Manipulation often works through predictable patterns. It depends on knowing what someone fears, what they need, or what they will sacrifice just to keep peace. But when you become more self-aware, those patterns lose their power. You begin recognizing when someone is trying to create guilt, confusion, or doubt, and instead of reacting automatically, you choose your response. That change can frustrate people who benefited from the older version of you. They may wonder why the same words no longer affect you, why you no longer rush to explain yourself, or why you are comfortable walking away from situations that once controlled your emotions. The truth is, becoming emotionally independent changes every relationship around you. People who genuinely care about you will respect your growth, while those who depended on your weakness may struggle with the new version of you. Your greatest victory was not proving someone wrong. It was becoming so secure in who you are that their approval, criticism, or attempts to control your direction no longer determine your choices. When someone loses the ability to manipulate you, they often realize they never had as much power as they thought. You did not take their power away. You simply stopped handing it to them. Number 14. The real reason they keep talking is because your story never ended the way they wrote it. People often create expectations about others based on limited experiences. They decide who someone is, what they are capable of, and where they believe that person will eventually end up. Once they create that image, they become comfortable with it, because it gives them a sense of certainty. But when someone refuses to follow the path they predicted, it creates a level of confusion that is difficult for them to ignore. Your journey became uncomfortable for them because it challenged the ending they had already imagined for you. They expected certain struggles to defeat you. They expected criticism to make you quit. They expected rejection to make you seek their approval again. But instead, every challenge became another reason for you to grow stronger. That is why some people continue talking about you long after they thought the situation was finished. They are trying to understand how someone they underestimated became someone they can no longer dismiss. Your progress forced them to revisit opinions they were once confident about. The most powerful part is that you did not rewrite your story to prove them wrong. You simply kept becoming a better version of yourself. While others were focused on predictions, you were focused on progress. While they were discussing your possibilities, you were creating your reality through your actions. The truth is, when people start talking about you after you have changed, grown, and moved differently, it is rarely just about the things you did. It is often about the things your transformation revealed. Your growth challenged old opinions. Your discipline exposed weak assumptions. Your refusal to be controlled disrupted expectations. And your ability to keep moving forward forced people to confront a reality they were not prepared to accept. Throughout this journey, we uncovered something powerful. Sometimes the biggest victory is not defeating your critics, but becoming someone they can no longer define. You did not silence them by fighting every battle, explaining every decision, or proving yourself to everyone. You silenced them by becoming consistent, focused, and committed to your own path. People can create rumors, form opinions, and tell stories about you, but time has a way of revealing the truth. Actions eventually speak louder than assumptions. Character eventually becomes louder than criticism, and a person who continues growing becomes impossible to ignore. The most important lesson is this: never allow someone else's limited view of you to become the limit of your own potential. Not everyone will understand your journey while you are building it. Some people only recognize your value after they see the results of what they once doubted. So keep growing, keep improving, keep protecting your peace. The same people who questioned your direction may one day study your path because they cannot understand how you became the person they never expected you to become. If this message connected with you and gave you a new perspective, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful insights like this. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave your thoughts in the comments because your voice matters. Thank you for watching, and remember, your story is still being written. God bless you.